couldn't have done this without my partner, Xavier, whose creative accounting unfortunately meant he couldn't be with us tonight. The sound of Trevor's voice, amplified and slick, echoed through the ballroom. On stage, the spotlight caught the faint shimmer of condensation on his champagne flute as he raised it to the crowd. His expression was a perfect performance of regret, the kind you practice in a mirror. My position near the back wall, unseen by the stage, I watched him soak in the applause meant for both of us. That's a fascinating version of the story, Trevor. My voice was quiet, spoken to no one, but the words felt heavy and solid in my mouth. My plan had just begun. 5 years earlier, we met at a tech conference in Denver, two ambitious creatives lost in a sea of corporate jargon. Trevor was the charismatic salesman. I was the quiet design strategist. We bonded over lukewarm coffee and a shared belief that we could build something better. Our agency, Solstice Digital, was born on a cocktail napkin that night. Our first big win, landing the Zephyr outdoor account, was celebrated with cold pizza on the floor of our tiny, unfurnished office at 3 a.m. It felt pure, a partnership forged in exhaustion and genuine excitement. The first red flag was so small I barely registered it. Ever forgot to bill a small client for a side project I'd completed, blaming a server glitch. When the client paid me directly via Venmo, Trevor laughed it off, saying, "See, it all works out." I believed him. I wanted to. The next 2 years were a blur of success. We won the Kinetic account, then the Vanguard portfolio. We upgraded from cold pizza to celebratory dinners at Morton's, and from a cramped office to a sunlit loft with matching Herman Miller chairs. Trevor handled the finances, the client-facing schmoozing, and the growth strategy. I was the engine, the one pulling all-nighters, managing the design team, and ensuring our work was impeccable. Balance felt right. He was the voice, I was the vision. The cracks started as hairline fractures. Trevor began taking solo client development trips to Miami and the Caymans. The expense reports, once meticulous, became vague. A $5,000 receipt from a jeweler was logged as client gifting. A first-class flight was emergency travel. I was working 80-hour weeks to meet deadlines while he was sending cheerful texts from a beach. I rationalized it. It was the rainmaker, and rainmakers needed to water the clouds. The discovery was accidental, mundane. A final payment notice arrived in the mail from a print vendor, a man I'd known for years. The invoice for $18,000 was 90 days past due. I called him embarrassed, and he was confused. He said Trevor had paid it weeks ago, or at least, Trevor had asked him to send a revised invoice to a personal Gmail address and mark the official one as pending. My blood went cold. At night, I stayed late. Using my admin access to QuickBooks, I started digging. It took me 3 weeks of sleepless nights, cross-referencing our official bank statements with the accounting software. I found a ghost ledger. Small amounts, a few thousand here and there, were being diverted from large client payments into a secondary account I'd never heard of, Pinnacle Global Bank. The descriptions were innocuous: tax provision, contingency fund. Total was over $150,000. I confronted him. He was masterful, a virtuoso of gaslighting. He called it an aggressive but legal tax shelter he'd set up to protect our capital. He said he kept it from me so I wouldn't worry. He even transferred $20,000 back into our main account as a show of good faith. For a moment, I almost buckled. The desire to believe it was a misunderstanding was overwhelming. Then, while looking through server backups, I found a deleted email folder. Inside was a wire transfer confirmation for an $85,000 deposit to a yacht broker in Belize. Subject line read, down payment for the Solstice. He wasn't building a tax shelter, he was building an escape route. The breaking point was the Innovator of the Year awards. He knew I'd be there. He also knew he had locked me out of all company accounts that morning. His plan was clear: accept our award, publicly paint me as a disgraced thief, and disappear before I could react. I saw our biggest client, Mr. Sterling, in the front row, his face a mask of disappointment. Reporter I recognized from Forbes was taking notes. On stage, Trevor delivered his cruel monologue. It's a tragedy when one partner's greed poisons the well for everyone. But the vision of Solstice Digital is stronger than any one person, and it will endure. As the room erupted in sympathetic applause, my mind went perfectly, terrifyingly still. The rage vanished, replaced by a cold, crystalline focus, and I noticed a tiny detail. The pen he was nervously clicking in his hand was a custom Mont Blanc I had given him when we signed our partnership papers, engraved with the date and a serial number. A gift meant to signify permanence, now an instrument of his betrayal. It would also be an instrument of his undoing. The next 6 weeks were a masterclass in controlled deconstruction. I hired Ms. Wallace, a forensic accountant turned litigator whose reputation was legendary. Retainer was $25,000, nearly everything I had left. She was surgical. Emotion is a liability, she told me during our first meeting. We will use his, not yours. Our evidence had to be an iron cage. We assembled 7 key pillars. The Pinnacle Global Bank statements. IP logs showing Trevor accessing the ghost account from vacation resorts in Aruba. A sworn affidavit from our former office manager, whom Trevor had fired after she questioned a suspicious invoice. A text message from the print vendor. The $85,000 wire transfer for the yacht. The ironic coincidence came from Ms. Wallace. Jeweler where Trevor had expensed the client gifting purchase was her cousin. He happily provided a statement that the item purchased was a diamond bracelet, and he remembered Trevor mentioning it was for his new girlfriend, not a client. Finally, I remembered the Montblanc pen. I had the receipt with the serial number. We subpoenaed the jeweler's records, proving he bought a matching one for the girlfriend, another business expense. One close call came when a sophisticated phishing email landed in my inbox, disguised as a message from Ms. Wallace. My friend Zane, an IT security expert, analyzed it. The metadata tracked back to a server Trevor had set up. He was hunting for my strategy. On Ms. Wallace's advice, I sent a decoy, a deliberately weak settlement offer through an old email address, making it seem like I was floundering and desperate. As predicted, Trevor took the bait. Demanded a formal mediation, eager for the chance to intimidate me into silence. The mediation room was beige and soulless. Trevor sat flanked by a lawyer who radiated expensive confidence. He smirked at me, a predator enjoying the final moments of the hunt. Before we discuss your generous offer, Trevor, I have a few documents to share. Ms. Wallace slid a single, thick binder across the polished table. Trevor's smirk faltered as he saw the Pinnacle Global Bank logo on the cover. He started to bluster about doctored files and corporate espionage. Ms. Wallace ignored him, calmly turning to the first tab. She detailed every fraudulent transfer, every falsified expense report, every IP address. Trevor's lawyer stopped taking notes and started staring at his client. Then came the second wave. The killer proof. Ms. Wallace placed a small audio recorder on the table. This is a call you made to the Belize Yacht Brokerage on March 14th, she said. They, like most international financial firms, automatically record all calls for security. She pressed play. Trevor's voice filled the silent room, arrogant and clear, explaining to the broker that he was liquidating his ex-partner's share of the assets to cover the final payment. The broker's automated message at the start of the call, "This call may be recorded for quality assurance," made it perfectly admissible. The color drained from Trevor's face. He looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Where did you get that?" he stammered. I leaned forward. "You talked a lot about foundations, Trevor." "I just made sure to check yours." The aftermath was swift and brutal. Facing undeniable evidence of felony fraud and embezzlement, Trevor's bravado collapsed. The mediation ended with him signing over his entire 50% stake in the company, the Solstice Yacht, and agreeing to a court-ordered restitution of $225,000. Ms. Wallace's office released a carefully worded statement to the press. Forbes reporter, smelling a much better story, ran a feature titled Innovation and In-House Betrayal. Within 24 hours, Trevor was a pariah. His social media went dark. Friends and clients abandoned him. The last I heard, he was facing criminal charges. A few months later, a former colleague sent me a blurry photo taken at a gas station 60 miles out of the city. It was Trevor, working as a cashier, his expensive watch gone, his face hollowed out. I rebranded the agency to Xavier Creative. I moved into a smaller, brighter office downtown, one I could afford on my own. The work is still demanding, but the silence is different now. It isn't loneliness, it's peace. I learned that trust is a beautiful, dangerous thing, and sometimes the strongest foundations are the ones you have to rebuild alone. The awards organization, after a public retraction, sent the Innovator of the Year trophy to my new office. I put it on a shelf, but not before adding a small, new inscription at the bottom, just for me. He couldn't have done this without me.